Well, good morning and welcome, everyone. If you don't know who I am, my name's Tanner. I'm the youth director here at Central. I've been here, unbelievable, for over 2 years, almost 3 years now. Almost 3 years. Unreal how time flies. I can't believe you guys kept me around for that long. It's been a privilege every time I've sat up here and shared God's word, and today is no different. My hope today, knowledge that this book, man, it is living, it is active, it's sharper than any two-edged sword, and it has so much power, and the power is not going to come from me this morning, the power is going to come from this book, and I am so thankful for it. I'm so thankful for God's word, and really that's the heartbeat behind what we're going to be talking about the next couple of weeks. You see, we're getting into a series called Words to Live By. As you can see, these are verses every believer should know. So what we're talking about is, as Pastor Ben described, we're talking about some power verses, or powerful verses. We're talking about verses that we want to remind ourselves of as followers of Jesus Christ. We're talking about verses that we want to ingrain in our heads and in our hearts, because they're verses that remind us not only of who we are in Christ, but really just who God is. It's truth that we need to remind ourselves of. So what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is we're going to take 1 or 2 verses at a time, and we're just going to dive into that verse for one Sunday. And we're going to do that for 3-4 weeks, something like that. We'll see how long it goes. But we also wanted to warn you, just like we did with Battle Ready, we're assigning memory verses. So next week, come prepared. I know, I'm getting some looks like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I know, you're making me memorize the Bible. Unreal. Man, hey, more of God's word is always a good thing. Next Sunday, we're gonna ask that you come prepared to recite the verse that we're diving into today, all right? So next Sunday, come prepared to recite this Sunday's verse, and it'll be the same throughout the rest of the series. Many of you know that I finished my undergrad degree here not too long ago. I graduated in December, and I now have a degree in, what's it called? Theology with a concentration in pastoral ministry. So basically, in other words, I've got the piece of paper that says I can do what I've been doing for 3 years, but that's fine. That's funny how things like that work out. I have finally finished that up, and I say that because, quite frankly, there are quite a few, and many of you know this if you've been through college, there are quite a few interesting people you meet as you go through your 4 years or whatever it may be. I met some great people. I met some professors who taught me a lot about this book and helped me dive into it, and I had some great mentors. I met some great friends. Obviously, I met my wife, and that's been an incredible blessing to me. But there are also the interesting people you meet. I loved this guy to death. He was hilarious, really funny. But there was one particular individual who, he was a character. He was something else. Not your average run-of-the-mill kind of a guy. To start off with, he stood about 5 foot tall. So you can imagine he didn't like standing next to me very much. Yeah, he really didn't like that. But he and I got to be friends, and he was real short. He had a high-pitched voice, kind of a raspy, scratchy, high-pitched voice. No matter what you said, doesn't matter the conversation, doesn't matter what you said to him, at some point during that conversation, he was going to find a way to say, "Is that a short joke? Are you making a height joke there?" No, I'm not, dude. It's okay. Just calm down. Don't get offended. He was never offended, but he just liked picking on people that way. He was kind of that kind of a guy. So anyways, he's 5 foot tall, high-pitched voice, great funny guy, and the other thing you need to know about him is he just always wanted to make noise. He would not stop talking. And I say that in the most loving way possible. I love this guy. He wouldn't stop talking. Always had something to talk about, always wanted to say something to someone, and it was a great thing, honestly, except when it got in trouble in class, then it wasn't a good thing. But besides that, if he wasn't talking to someone, he would be walking around. He loved to go for walks, and he would whistle all the time. I shouldn't say would, like he's gone. No, he's still alive. But he whistles and walks all over the place, and The other thing he does is sings. Bless his heart, he has a hard time carrying a tune, but he sings. What's the phrase my dad always says? Make a joyful noise to the Lord. He definitely does that. Well, I'm saying all of this, and I'm telling you about one of my old friends because there's one distinct memory I have of him, pretty much one that takes the cake. I remember I was probably within my last year and a half of finishing my degree, and we had lots of classes together. I don't remember what class it was. I don't remember what we were talking about or what led to this, but someone in the class, the professor or another student, said something that made him think of a song. It was an old hymn, and I don't know what came over the guy, but he just had to sing it. Right then and there, middle of the classroom. It tells you what my classrooms were like. He starts singing this old song, and I'm kind of just sitting back, like, what's going on, Professor? What are you gonna do here? How are you gonna handle this? And he keeps singing and keeps singing. All of a sudden, before I realize it, the entire classroom is singing this song, and I have got no idea what is going on. I'm sitting there. I've heard the song before, but I don't know it, like maybe once or twice. I didn't know it well enough to sing it or quote it or whatever it might be. But something was said, and he wanted to sing that song. The song itself is an old hymn called A Mighty Fortress is Our God. A mighty fortress is our God. Now that song, it was written roughly around 1527, 1528. That's where people speculate, scholars speculate. But what's interesting about it is the reason it was written. A Mighty Fortress is Our God was written by Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King Jr., Martin Luther, the Reformationist guy. Yeah, I got a chuckle. I had a bunch of people laugh at that in the first service. He wrote it in a time of great fear and need. Long story short, he believed that one follower of Jesus Christ, one should only stand on God's word. But the teaching of the church at the time was that you should stand on God's word and interpretations of the church and the traditions of the church and all that. So they got into a debate. It died at Worms. And the result, well, the church didn't like what he had to say, so they threw him in a tower, locked him in there, and they planned to execute him the next morning. It's pretty harsh. It's in that time that Martin Luther ran to a psalm. One psalm. And that psalm became the inspiration for the song, A Mighty Fortress is Our God. Because it was written, not necessarily quoted, but inspired by a particular psalm. That psalm is Psalm 46. This morning we're going to dive into Psalm 46, verse 10. We're going to walk through the psalm a little bit because that's going to help us set the stage for verse 10. But we're going to focus primarily on verse 10 itself. Long story short, Martin Luther didn't actually get executed, and we got a fantastic hymn out of it. Martin Luther was rescued literally by some of his followers on horseback, and he was taken away, interestingly, to a castle, a mighty fortress. And he was protected for over a year where he translated the New Testament into German. Interesting. Ironic. But we're going to dive into Psalm 46, first verse 10. I'll read verse 10 to you, and then we'll start from the beginning of the chapter in a few minutes. It says this, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth." Psalm 46:10 is one of those verses that is everywhere, right? I debated whether or not I should preach this morning with a mug up here full of coffee that had the literal words, "Be still and know that I'm God" on it, Psalm 46:10. I debated, but I figured if I knocked that thing over, then there would be no recovering from that. So I decided not to, probably better judgment. If you go back into my office and you look on the windowsill, there's a sign there. It says, "Be still and know that I'm God." If you go anywhere that is somewhat associated with Christianity, there's a good chance you're going to see that verse somewhere. It's all over the place, and people love it. They know it, they love it, they quote it, they read it all the time. People love this verse. It's everywhere, and it hits us all over the place. So you would think we do what it says. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. And I think the reason for that is really we don't understand it. People think they do, maybe, but not entirely. And I hope to help you with that this morning. But in order to do that, like I said, we've got to go back to the beginning. We've got to go to verse 1. So in just a second, I'm going to read through this entire psalm, and hopefully this will help set the stage for what is actually going on in verse 10 when we get there. But before I do that, I want you to notice something. If you look in your Bible, if you've got a copy of God's Word in front of you, you might notice that there are stanzas. It's almost like little breaks. And I want you to notice that because I want you to know that this was a song that was sung. Psalm 46 was originally a song. They didn't have hymnals or anything like that way back at the beginning of the church. So what would they do? They would get together and they would sing psalms. Psalm 46 was one of the ones that they would sing. And we know that especially by one word that you'll see there on the side 3 times. Selah. Selah means stop, pause, and quietly reflect. Reflect on what you've just sung. It's a musical term. So with that backstory, let's go ahead and let's jump into Psalm 46, starting in verse 1, and we will go all the way through, and I'll hopefully help you understand what's going on. It says this: God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. So he's saying here, first of all, God is our refuge and strength, right? God is our refuge and strength. He keeps us from danger. He keeps us from harm, but he's also our strength. He gives us strength. He gives us grace to continue one day at a time. You need this much grace for today. That's how much grace you're going to get. He's going to give you moment by moment grace to keep you going. He's going to sustain you. He's a very present help in trouble. He's not sitting back like many people think of God. He's not sitting back going, ha, look what mess you got yourself in now. Have fun, good luck. No, that's not our God. He's not sitting back watching everything unfold. He's active. He's working. Therefore, we will not what? Fear. Because of who God is, we will not fear. Guys, I don't want you to context for the entire psalm. We will not fear. And this song itself is a celebration of the fact that we don't have to fear because we know who our God is. He is a refuge, a strength, and a very present help when we are in trouble. It celebrates the fact that God is exactly who he says he is. He's a refuge and a strength. So we won't be afraid. We all know what it's like to be afraid, though. We've all been afraid. We've all been anxious. We've all been worried over something. I don't know what the case is. Maybe you are fearful or anxious over the state of your marriage itself. Maybe you're fearful or anxious because of your relationship, your dating relationship, and coming off of a relationship reset. Pastor Ben really shook your boots a little bit and you're scared. Maybe you're afraid of loneliness. Maybe you're afraid of slipping into old habits that you thought you put to death. Maybe you're simply afraid of the dark. Maybe you're anxious over finances, how you're going to get the bills paid, worried about how all that might turn out. Let me remind you, yes, we're all afraid unless you're too tough to admit it, but our God is still a refuge and strength. He's still a very present help. And then by way of hyperbole here in verses 2 and 3, he takes these big things, waters roaring and foaming and the mountains falling all over the place, and basically he says, even if you face massive problems like these that are powerful, that are out of your control, God is still constant. He's still there. He's still constant. Run then to him, your fortress. And then he continues, verse 4, he says this, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. So the writer, he talks about Jerusalem, the holy city of God, and he goes to the temple as well. Basically, what he's trying to say is God's presence is powerful. And where God is present, there is peace and joy. But then he goes, and in verse 6 and verse 7, he references the power of God. The nations rage, yes, they fight, and they are powerful, and they are strong. They rage against each other. The kingdoms totter. But when he opens his mouth, when he speaks, things melt. That's who my God is. The Lord of hosts, God in all of his armies, is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. And then he continues, verse 8, he says, come, behold the works of the Lord. Look at what he's done. How he has brought desolations on the earth. Verse 9, he makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns chariots with fire. In other words, would you just come and praise him? Look at what he's done. Look at all that he's done in the past. Marvel at it. But then what? Well, then we come to verse 10. Be still. Look at all that he's done and be still. Know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Same thing it says in verse 7. Be still. When you're afraid, when you doubt, you're facing difficulties beyond your own control, God's saying, please be still. Look at what I've already done and be still. I said a minute ago that many people don't understand what this verse is actually talking about. And I want to take you to one other place and explain why I said that. If you go into the Hebrew language and you study it just a little bit, you'll find that there is a word for that can be translated as rest or to be still or motionless. And basically, people take that kind of an idea, and that's what they think Psalm 46:10 is saying. All you need to do is come before God and rest and just be in his presence and soak him in and meditate on his word. Just get quiet and still before God. Please hear me. Do that. That's a good thing to do. That's a great practice for us to have as followers of Jesus Christ. Do that. But that's not necessarily what the word be still always means, or what the phrase be still always means. An example of the first one I told you about, how you're to be still and rest and get in God's presence and just sit there. You can look at Psalm 37:7 for that. It says, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Be still in this verse. The original Hebrew word is talking about rest, being literally still, motionless, quiet yourself before God. So we see that and we read that, and then when we come to Psalm 46:10, we think that's what we're supposed to do. Here's the problem. In Psalm 46:10, the phrase be still is a completely different Hebrew word. It's completely different. The word in Psalm 46:10 is rapha. That word can be translated as this: cease striving. Kind of changes the meaning, doesn't it? Cease strive. Stop it. Stop where you're at. Get your hands off of it. Let it go. If you were talking about something that had to do with water, you could say this word, Rapha, and they would drop it and let it sink. That's what it would be translated as, let it sink. If you were pulling really hard on a rope, you wanted it nice and taut, no slack in there. Someone could say that word, and if you understood Hebrew, you would know what they were trying to say. They were trying to tell you to relax your hands a little bit and let some slack in the rope. Release your grip just a little bit. So when we come to be still here in this verse, we've got to be careful not to read into it what we think just to be still and quiet before God. Yes, please do that. That's a good thing. But what we're talking about here is coming before God, realizing your circumstances, and then dropping them at his feet. Saying, God, here it is. This is what I'm walking through. This is what I'm dealing with. Here's the hurt, the pain, the fear, the anxiety that I've got. Here you go. Let me just relax my grip. Release it. Drop it, or maybe a better way to translate this would be surrender it. Whatever the circumstance, surrender it. So we've got to be careful. I love, it's very similar, this idea of be still is very similar to what Jesus says in Mark chapter 4. It says this, Mark 4:35. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And the other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. You've got to realize this is a bad storm. If some fishermen who know those waters, know how to survive on those waters, if they're having a problem with it, this is a bad storm. Well, what's Jesus doing? But he was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. Really? God, Jesus, what are you doing? How are you asleep in this? The disciples are thinking. And they woke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? Like, God, do you see what's going on around us? Do you see these waves? Are you feeling the ship shaking back and forth? How are you asleep? Don't you care that we're dying here? I love this. And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Peace, be still. Calm down. Knock it off. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. I love this. Look at this next part. He said to them, Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear and said to one another, Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? It's the same kind of an idea. Peace, be still. Let go. Calm down just a little bit and hand it over to God. Whatever the circumstance, whatever the struggle, whatever the fear. Psalm 46:10 it's as if God is saying, in the middle of the fear, the stress, the worry, anxiety, pain, problems, please, would you just come to me and lay it down? Would you drop it at my feet? Bring it before me and let it go. Stop trying to deal with it on your own. Stop trying to fix it on your own. Stop trying to fix yourself on your own. Come to me and surrender. And here's what's amazing. You want to know why we can do that? Well, it's in the next phrase, Psalm 46:10. Because I'm God. Because you can know and trust in the fact that I'm the one who's God. So you can come to me with all of this, and you can drop it at my feet and leave it because you know that I'm God and you're not. And you can rest in that fact. You can rest in that knowledge. You can rest in the knowledge that God is sovereign. And he wants you to take a step back to remember that he's sovereign and in control, and there has never been a moment where he has not been in control, even when it doesn't necessarily feel like it. Psalm 100, verse 3, know that the Lord, he is God. It is he who makes us, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Ephesians 1:11, in him we have obtained an inheritance, having been predestined according to the purpose of him who works all things according to the counsel of his will. God has always been in control, and there's never been a moment where he hasn't been. There's nothing that's escaped his notice or caught him by surprise. There's nothing that will ever happen that takes him by surprise. I don't know why, but he allows certain circumstances and situations into our lives that we might not necessarily like. We might not understand why, but he says, would you please just come and rest in the fact that I'm sovereign, that I know what I'm doing, that I'm God and you're not. Even Job, at the end of all of it, after losing everything, after really putting God, you could say putting God on trial and questioning God, and then God correcting him, even Job found himself in a place to say, Job 42, 1 and 2, and Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do all things, and no purpose of yours can be thwarted. I know that you can do all things, and no purpose can be thwarted. God, at the end of the day, I know you're in control. And I know you've got it. You're God, I'm not. We don't always know why things happen, but we do know that he's sovereign. As I look more and more at our world, at our culture, at our nation, the state of our nation, it seems like lately more and more I'm praying prayers like, God, would you stop this? Why would you allow this? Why are you continuing to allow these things that go directly against your word? God, why are you continuing to allow things that really just stain and taint your name? I can't help but think of so many different circumstances and ask God, why? What are you doing? But it's interesting that even in those circumstances, and even as we love Psalm 46:10, if I asked you to quote the entire verse to me, I'm guessing most of you probably couldn't. I couldn't when I started studying for this. We love that first line, but how many of us actually know what that second line says? Let me read those to you. It says this, I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Is there not such peace and comfort in that? Knowing that no matter what happens, we can take things to God, we can drop them at his feet, we can trust that he's sovereign, that he's working, and know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he, at the end of the day, will be exalted. At the end of the day, he is the one who will be glorified. It's as if God is saying, I know the things, they might not make sense to you. I know you're confused. I know you're dealing with a lot at times. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to come and give it to me. Surrender it to me. Surrender yourself to me. I want you to rest in my sovereignty and know that no matter what you face, I've got it under control. And at the end of the day, I'm still going to be on the throne. I'm still going to be lifted high. I'm still going to be exalted. There's so much hope and peace and comfort in that reality, is there not? In the middle of our circumstances, we know that God will come out on top. Maybe not now, but at the end of it all, he will. He will. You know why we can be confident of that? Here's the reality of it. He's already won. Let me point you to what Paul wrote in Philippians 2. I love this. And being found in human form, he humbled himself, becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God is what? Highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Listen, Jesus Christ has been exalted. Jesus Christ is the King of kings and Lord of lords. Jesus has already won. He's already defeated everything this world and the enemy could throw at him. He's already taken care of it. And one day, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Jesus is exalted. And on that day, God will be exalted as well, when every knee and every tongue point to him. There is a day coming where every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. The question is, will we submit or surrender now, or will we do so when it is too late? But there is a day coming when everyone will realize that Peter was right in Acts chapter 4 when he said this, and there is salvation in no one else. In no one else. For there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. The question is, do you surrender now or later? Our hope and our prayer is that you do now. That you do now. But here's the reality of it. Whether or not you do surrender now or realize who he is later, that does not change the fact that Jesus is Lord. That does not change the fact that Jesus is the King of kings and Lord of lords, and it doesn't change the fact that he is exalted. Psalm 46:10 is really an amazing verse, isn't it? It reminds us that we can take it all, that we can take everything we face, our fear, our anxiety, our very lives and own hearts, and surrender it to God. We can give it over to him. We can rest and find peace in the fact that he's sovereign, that he's in control, and that he has a plan. We can rest in that knowledge, and we can know no matter what happens, he will be exalted, and he has been exalted through Christ. I know I've thrown a lot at you this morning, so I kind of wanted to sum it up and throw a statement on the screen that you might be able to walk out here with, a tangible way of walking out of here. Surrender it all. Find peace in his sovereignty, and live in the knowledge that he is and will always be exalted. Surrender it all. Find peace in his sovereignty, and live in the knowledge that he will and always be exalted, no matter what your day looks like. It's not always going to be easy. There will be days when life knocks you down a peg or two. There will be days when life will hurt. Life's going to rough you up pretty bad sometimes. But no matter what, we have this hope that our Lord is coming back. We have this hope that no matter the circumstances, and we have this peace that no matter the circumstances, we can come before our God, we can marvel at all that he's done, and we can lay every single thing at his feet and take our hands off. Say, God, it's all yours. We can cease striving because we know who's in control, and we trust him. If you're not a follower of Christ, don't wait until it's too late. Make that decision. Make today the day of salvation. Make the decision to follow him, or as we say around here, ask Jesus to be the leader of your life and the forgiver of your sins. Only you can make that choice. But when you do, you will have this hope, this peace, this comfort like we do. And you will be able to do this as well, to be still and know, as he says, that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Amen. God, we come before you. We're humbled by this time. We're humbled by your word. We thank you for it. God, as we go from this place, we ask that you would just remind us. God, remind us of your love that was shed for us on the cross. Remind us of the freedom from sin, death, and hell that we have from it. Not because we deserved it, but God, because you're merciful and gracious, not wanting anyone to perish. God, thank you for the reality that you are sovereign, that you are in control, that you're higher than everything, and that no matter what comes our way, no matter what we face, we can run to you, we can cling to you, we can lay it down at your feet and trust that no matter the circumstances of our day, you, for all of eternity, are Lord. You are God, and we are not. And you will be exalted. God, we thank you and we praise you for that. In Jesus' name, amen.